Good day. Welcome to Teacher Ariel TV. Matatag Curriculum, Math 4, Quarter 4, Week 4. Represent decimal numbers using models and manipulatives to show the relationship to fractions. Read and write decimal numbers using models and manipulatives to show the relationships to fractions. Day 1. Let's have a short review. Name the fraction that represents the shaded part of each illustration. Number 1. We have here 3/10. Number 2. 5/10 or 1/2. Number 3. 7/10. Fractions can be written in another form. Let us look at the following examples. 3/10 can be written as 0.3. Or write in words 3/10. 5/10 can be written as 0.5 in words 5/10. 7/10 can be written as 0.7 in words 7/10. Zero 0.3, 0.5, and 0.7 are called decimals. The word decimal comes from the Latin word decimus, meaning tenth. It is from the root word decim, meaning 10. Decimal is a fraction written in special form where each digit represents a different power of 10. Decimal number is a number that has a decimal point followed by digits that show a value smaller than 1. Where are decimal numbers commonly encountered? Number 1, we have your general weighted average of a student in school. Number 2, price of goods in malls and supermarkets. Body temperature, height and weight of a person, and distance from one place to another. Activity 1, coloring grid paper. I have here a math storytelling. In the Matatag kingdom, there lived a beautiful princess named Snowy. One day, while walking through the forest to visit her friends, the 7 dwarfs, she saw a garden where red apples grew abundantly. She noticed that 3 of the trees had 100 red apples each. She decided to pick 15 red apples from the first tree, 44 apples from the second tree, and 8 apples from the third tree. Then, she excitedly went to her friend's house bringing the red apples. She shared the apples to her friends. Snowy and the 7 dwarfs made a promise to take good care of the forest that provides bountiful fruits to all living things. What fraction represents the red apples picked by Snowy from the first tree? The answer is 15/100. What should this fraction be written in decimal form? So the answer is 0.15 or 15/100. What fraction represents the remaining red apples from the first tree? So the remaining red apples, 85/100. How should this fraction be written in decimal form? So we have here 0.85 or 85/100. The whole grid paper with 100 squares represents the total number of apples hanging in the first tree. Since Snowy picked 15 apples, the fraction that represents them is 15 hundredths, which can be written in decimal form as 0.15 and is read as 15 hundredths, while the remaining apples from the tree can be represented by the fraction 85 hundredths, which can be written in decimal form as 0.85 and is read as 85 hundredths. What fraction represents the red apples picked by Snowy from the second tree? So we have here 44 hundredths. How should this fraction be written in decimal form? What fraction represents the remaining red apples from the second tree? So we have here the answer, 56 hundredths. How should this fraction be written in decimal form? "44 hundredths" in decimal form is 0.44, which is read as 44 hundredths. 56 hundredths in decimal form is 0.56, which is read as 56 hundredths. What fraction represents the red apples picked by Snowy from the third tree? So the answer is 8 hundredths. How should this fraction be written in decimal form? So the answer is, what fraction represents the remaining red apples from the third tree? 92 hundredths. How should this fraction be written in decimal form? 8 hundredths in decimal form is 0.08, which is read as 8 hundredths. 92 hundredths in decimal form is 0.92, which is read as 92 hundredths. Another activity using base 10 blocks. Base 10 blocks can be used in lessons on whole numbers and decimals. For whole numbers, cube represents thousands, flat represents hundreds, rod represents tens, and unit represents ones. However, for decimals, cube represents tens, flat represents ones, rod represents tens, and unit represents hundreds. How many rods will make one flat? So the answer is 10. One rod is 1/10 of a flat. How many units will make one flat? So the answer is 100. One rod is 1/100th of a flat. Let's answer this. The decimals of 15 hundredths. So the answer is 0.15. In words, we have here 15 hundredths. The decimal of the fraction 44 hundredths is 0.44. In words, 44 hundredths. Next, so we have here 0.08. In words, 8 hundredths. Example 1. Represent 0.15 using base 10 blocks. In decimal, in fraction. Example 2. Represent 0.44 or 44 hundredths using base 10 blocks. In decimals, in fraction. Example 3. Represent 0.08 or 8 hundredths using base 10 blocks. Day 2. There are 3 grade 4 pupils who took a 100-point achievement test in mathematics. They got the following scores. Score of Chris, using a grid with 100 squares. So score of Chris in fraction form is 78 hundredths. So in decimal is 0.78 or 78 hundredths. Using base 10 blocks. Score of Catherine, using a grid with 100 squares. So in fraction form, we have here 95 hundredths. In decimal form is 0.95. Using base 10 blocks. Next, score of Vince, using a grid with 100 squares. Using base 10 blocks. Let's answer this. Write the fractions and decimals that represent each illustration. Number 1. In decimals. Number 2. In fraction. In decimal. Number 3. In fraction. In decimal. Another. Write the decimals represented by the base 10 blocks. So the answer is 0.25 or 25 hundredths. Number 2. So the answer is 1 and 44 hundredths. Day 3. Using the grid papers with 100 squares, illustrate the following decimals. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. So I have here the answer K. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. And number 5. Another activity. Name the decimals represented by the following base 10 blocks. Number 1. So the answer is 63 hundredths. Number 2. So the answer is 3.24 or 3 and 24 hundredths. According to Guinness World Records, the tallest man ever recorded is Robert Wadlow with a height of 2 and 72 hundredths meters. Let us find the place value of the number 2 and 70 hundredths. I have here a place value math. From left to right, the place value of 2 is ones, 7 is tenths, and 2 rightmost is the hundredths. Therefore, there are 2 ones, 7 tenths, and 2 hundredths. How do we read the given decimals? 2.72 is read as 2 and 72 hundredths. What are the guides or rules in reading decimal numbers? Read the whole number part. If the whole number is 0, then simply read the decimal part. Read the decimal point as end. and read the decimal part like a whole number and affix the place value of the rightmost digit. Day 4. Read the given decimal number and represent it using base 10 blocks. Number 1, we have here 29.32. We read 29.32 as 29 and 32 hundredths. To represent using base 10 blocks, 2 tenths, 9 ones, 3 tenths, and 2 hundredths. How about 0.43? 0.43 is read as 43 hundredths. Next, 0.7 is read as 7 tenths. 5.82 is read as 5 and 82 hundredths. Let's answer this. Write the following figures in words. I have here the answer K. Complete the table. Number 1. 12.3 read as 12 and 3 tenths. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. Number 6. Number 7. 8. 9. 10. Day 5. Formative assessment. Name the fractions and decimals represented by the shaded parts of the grids. Write them in words. Use the table provided to organize your answers. Number 1. In fraction form. In decimal form. Word form. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. Next, draw figures of the base 10 blocks to represent the given decimal numbers. Then write the numbers in words. So number 1, in words. Number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, That's all for now. Thanks for watching.